I thought we were discussing America and our futures.
Our president, George Bush, says that it's really best for for America's economy if our jobs go overseas.
Why is that good?
In February of 2006, there came yet another first. It was announced that a company owned by the United Arab Emirates would now manage several major American ports. It didn't take long for politicians to take serious notice.
Ally in the war
Representative
on terror,
Sue Myrick
but was
sent a
also
one-sentence letter to the president that read,
hijackers. Dear Mr. President, in regards to selling American ports to the United Arab Emirates, not just no, but hell no.
Did any of you talk to the 9/11 commissioners about that representation finding of theirs? Just raise your hand if anybody talked to the 9/11 commissioners.
Turning over the operation of our ports to Dubai was not only a policy mistake, it was a huge political blunder.
This is a company that has played by the rules, that has been cooperative with the United States from a country that's an ally in the war on terror, and it would send a terrible signal.
A divided Republican Party and
cannot outsource our infrastructure. We cannot outsource our security. We have to make things in America. We have to put Americans to work. They pay taxes, they pay into Social Security, they consume in the industry. When you send a job to China, there's no taxes on those people. They don't pay taxes, they don't buy anything here, they're gone. And that's the...
In Congress, for the last 4 years, there's been talk of repealing tax credits given to U.S. companies that outsource. No bill has gone anywhere that attempts this reform.
There are legitimate values in outsourcing, not only jobs, but work.
That was Tom Donahue. Tom Donahue is the president and CEO of the United States Chamber of Commerce, endorsing the practice of American companies shipping jobs overseas so those jobs can be done by people in foreign countries instead of by Americans. Quote, U.S. Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Thomas Donahue urged American companies on Wednesday to send job overseas. Donahue said people affected by offshoring should, quote, stop whining. The benefits of offshoring jobs outweighs the cost. During a trip to India around the same time, Tom Donahue assures business leaders, quote, we are very confident that outsourcing is here to stay. It would be absolutely foolish to try and stop the phenomenon. Reporting from Think Progress has now revealed that even though the Chamber of Commerce says foreign money doesn't pay for their campaign ads, the same Chamber of Commerce bank account that pays for all of those ads has taken in at least $885,000 from more than 80 foreign companies. Foreign companies like this one in Mumbai, India, which calls itself the world leader in IT outsourcing. Also, this one in Singapore, which says it is a leader in engineering services outsourcing. They also get money from this one in Bangalore, India. It's described as India's biggest destination for U.S. offshoring. They all pay money into the Chamber of Commerce account from which the Chamber pays for its political ads.
Good evening from New York. This is Wednesday, October 20th, 13 days until the 2010 midterm elections. And the question Democrats are raising today is, what exactly do the secret big money bags behind hundreds of millions of dollars worth of attack ads against Democrats want from the Republicans they are trying to help? Most of those Democrats supported bailouts to save the economy, especially after the chamber threatened to punish anyone who voted against the bailouts. So why is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce now funneling big bucks to support Tea Party and other Republican candidates campaigning against those bailouts? What do they want that these Democrats will not give them? In our fifth story tonight, would you believe sending American jobs overseas? How-to symposiums sponsored by the Chamber, starring officials of the Chinese government. Outsourcing.
For help, a handout, if you will, in the form of, you guessed it, tax cuts. This will help them, they say, stay competitive with scary China and India. But shh. Let's not talk about the fact that many companies have outsourced jobs to those very same countries. So what's...
Well, all taxes are paid by people. So if you tax corporations, all they do is pass it through in higher prices to the end consumer. What we have to really look at is where does the revenue come from and where does the spending go? shuffling the deck around doesn't change the fundamental problem, which is that when you offshore labor, you're doing it because you can effectively hire slaves in places like China, and you can put your production in places where they don't care if you dump thousands of tons of toxic waste into the water. The tax code is a problem in the United States primarily because it favors some industries over others.
The contrast in the jobs created by U.S. firms, 1.4 million jobs created abroad last year compared to less than 1 million here at home. Why is nobody talking about this?
Well, it's actually worse than it appears because you need to add about 150,000 jobs a month in the United States to cover population growth.
In the census data that we just got out, there are some staggering figures when it comes to poverty. One of the things that I sort of highlighted is that the number of poor people in the U.S. is millions higher than previously known, with 1 in 6 Americans, many of them 65 and older, struggling in poverty. And
we're gaining private sector jobs each month instead of losing 800,000, as we did the month I took office.
One view is that disallowing offshore costs as legitimate expenses might stop additional or new business being offshored, but it's highly unlikely to result in the pullback of jobs that have already been shipped overseas. Would you agree with that? Business may not grow as fast, but business that's already overseas won't be affected.
You know, if at all they were able to implement the law to say that part of expenses can be linked to offshoring, because, you know, what 10% of the CEO's salary you link to offshoring, 20%, 30%?
Code that says you should pay lower taxes if you create a job in Bangalore, India, than if you create one in Buffalo, New York. And there still exists a caricature of India as a land of call centers and back offices that cost American jobs. That's a real perception. But these old stereotypes, these old concerns, ignore today's reality. In 2010, trade between our countries is not just a one-way street of American jobs and companies moving to India. It is a dynamic, two-way relationship that is creating jobs, growth, and higher living standards in both our countries. And that is the truth. Yes, we can. But to do this, we're going to have to up our game, Marquette. We've got to up our game. To attract the best jobs, the newest industries, we're going to have to out-innovate, out-educate, out-build. We're going to have to out-hustle the rest of the world. That Lincoln, because what you see is entrepreneurship and dynamism, a forward orientation, an optimism, a belief that if you've got a good idea and you're willing to put in the sweat and blood and tears to make it happen, that not only can you succeed for yourself, but you can grow the economy for everybody.
In my discussion with the President, we have decided to accelerate the deepening of our ties and to work as equal partners in a strategic relationship that will positively and decisively influence world peace, stability, and progress.
I cannot remember an occasion when we have agreed to so many new partnerships across so many areas as we have during my visit. Both Pakistan and India have an interest in reducing tensions between the two countries. The United States cannot impose a solution to these problems, but I've indicated to Prime Minister Singh that we are happy to play any role that the parties think is appropriate in reducing these tensions. Every discussion that I've had with Indian businesses, what I've seen is that our countries are matched up in a way that allows for enormous win-win potential. I want to be able to say to the American people, when they ask me, well, why are you spending time with India? Aren't they taking our jobs? I want to be able to say, actually, you know what? They just created 50,000 jobs, and that's why we shouldn't be resorting to protectionist measures. We shouldn't be thinking that it's just a one-way street.
Obama talked about creating jobs in this country and ending the outsource of good-paying American jobs to cheap foreign labor markets. But since being elected, President Obama has surrounded himself with advocates and proponents of outsourcing, including his nominee for Commerce Secretary. Bill Tucker has our report.
As a candidate, President Obama certainly sounded like a man opposed to the practice of outsourcing.
I say let's end tax cuts for companies that ship jobs overseas. We'll stop giving tax breaks to companies that ship jobs overseas. Give them to companies that are creating good jobs right here in Virginia.
But workers, they can't get capital, and they don't have customers.
Let's go issue by issue, starting with the use of Chinese slaves to boost our profitability. Am I wrong, Peter, to observe that while GDP growth once may have led to job creation, that now by virtue of the fact that I can create GDP, that I can create output by either diminishing wages here, outsourcing to Chinese slaves someplace else, automating here and getting rid of jobs, or financial gambling, that GDP growth through gambling, slavery, or robots is good for profitability but doesn't actually create jobs? Is that a fair observation from my perspective?
Well, you're not expressing it quite the way an economics professor would, but the bottom line is that most of the GDP growth has been on Wall Street from trading, and that doesn't create many jobs. It just creates huge bonuses. Meanwhile, American companies, if the economy is growing at 2% a year, they can cover that by essentially increasing productivity. You don't have to hire anybody. And they take all the money they've got, and where do they invest it? In China. The president has created an environment that's great for Wall Street traders, and General Motors now makes more cars in China and sells more than they do here. Basically, this is the outsourcing administration. It doesn't seem to get it. What Americans need are jobs making products that Americans are buying here but are right now made in China.
The industry has decided to come out in response to the protectionist voices coming from the United States. Industry body NASSCOM will raise visa and outsourcing issues during the U.S. President's visit. The $50 billion industry is already hurting with the recent fee hike for H-1B and L-1 visas.
Tonight, after the Wall Street Journal reported this morning that IBM is slashing thousands of jobs in the United States. IBM, in that story reported by the Wall Street Journal, will outsource most of those jobs to India at a time when millions of Americans are unemployed. As Bill Tucker now reports, IBM continues to create more jobs overseas while it lobbies for more federal stimulus money.
Pat, what is happening to manufacturing in America? We're losing it.
Well, basically what has happened is that we've set up a dynamic, beginning with the NAFTA agreement, Howard, that encourages companies to leave America. We have set up a situation where we're forcing companies and we're forcing American workers to compete against the penny wage labor of China. We're in a situation in which even the Mexicans can't compete against the Chinese. It is
under the radar in Congress and certainly in the media is trade and jobs. For the last 5 years, both President Bush and President Obama pushed a series of so-called free trade agreements with South Korea, Colombia, and Panama. As you learn...
You know, Dylan, I look back to Iowa, and I was in Iowa for the 2008 campaign, and I remember vividly this president, then a candidate, saying that over his dead body on South Korea, on Panama, and on Colombia, and I took him at his word. And now we're seeing these agreements come to us for a vote with his encouragement, and it breaks my heart. We will lose tens and tens, hundreds of thousands, in fact, of jobs. We will further eviscerate our manufacturing sector, which we need to in fact, invigorate. And the broken word on these agreements can only be explained by politics.
Here in the United States, we've responded to our challenges by focusing on the things that really matter: friendship, family, and community.
Pakistan military spokesperson Akhtar Abbas claims Islamabad has enough proof to substantiate that India is funding terror in South Waziristan. Displaying some arms and ammunition labeled as Indian ammo. The Pak Army chief said they would soon raise the issue with India through diplomatic channels. Athar Abbas said Pak troops recovered large quantities of Indian arms, literature, medical equipment and medicines near Sherwangi military base during combing operations. Pakistan's claim that India is fanning the insurgency while their army is busy in a battle with the Taliban.
Everything, it was inside job. And these 75 professors, they have promised, by God, we will come to the bottom of it. Regarding the second attack at Pentagon. At Pentagon, when the airplane crashed, there was no scraping on the grass. Nothing. Only a hole in the Pentagon. And the hole was only equal to the body of the plane. And we see a crater, and they showed on the television, but when the wings went, the wings weren't seen outside, neither were the window panes damaged of the Pentagon. If a plane body goes in and the wing stays out, either the wing will remain outside or the window pane will damage. The building was intact. So how could only in the circumference of a body of a plane, how can the wings go in as well as the tail? I mean, it's fabricated. The people who said that, you know, the plane went just 40 feet above my head. Today science tells us that if Boeing is flying at 40 feet above your head, that car will fly away. An interview was taken of an ex-military person. He said it sounded like a missile. It had to be a missile. The missile would make that hole. And there was no debris. There was debris, only a little bit debris. There was no part of the plane found there. There was only a small engine of a fighter plane found there. Even in the other place, they only find a crater. Time doesn't permit me. The amount of ample of evidence given there, even a fool will know that this was an inside job. But it doesn't convince George Bush. And what they say, the reason is only to attack Afghanistan, Iraq, and then Iran. They have been predicting that Iran is going to be attacked. They want to have control of the oil-rich countries. So this terrorist attack is for what? One is injustice. Second is for money, is for power. And many politicians find that he's going to lose the vote. He creates a fear psychosis. Okay, you better elect me or the Muslims will get you and they elected. Same thing in Gujarat. A fear psychosis was created. If you don't elect us, the Muslims will kill you, and the government came back in power. So what we realized that this was nothing but an inside job. And there are several tapes, several VCDs available, 9/11, loose change, then Fahrenheit, many. And if you see all this, it is a blatant, open secret that this attack on the Twin Towers was done by George Bush himself.
The 9/11 Commission, which you talk about, and this is what they did say, not what ABC pretended they said.
What did they say?
They said about you and President Bush, and I quote, "The U.S. government took the threat seriously, but not in the sense of mustering anything like the kind of effort that would be gathered to confront an enemy of the first, second, or even third rank."
First of all, that's not true with us and bin Laden.
Well, I'm talking about what the 9/11 Commission said.
Let's look at what Richard Clark said. Do you think Richard Clark has a vigorous attitude about bin Laden?
Yes, I do.
You do, don't you?
He has a variety of opinions and loyalties,
right.
but yes, he has a vigorous opinion.
Yeah, he has a variety of opinions and loyalties now, but let's look at the facts. He worked for Ronald Reagan. He was loyal to him. He worked for George H.W. Bush. He was loyal to him. He worked for me, and he was loyal to me. He worked for President Bush. He was loyal to him. They downgraded him and the terrorist operation. Now, look what he said. Read his book and read his factual assertions, not opinions, assertions. He said we took vigorous action after the African embassies. We probably nearly got bin Laden. Well, I authorized, no, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I authorized the CIA to get groups together to try to kill him. The CIA was run by George Tenet that President Bush gave the Medal of Freedom to. He said he did a good job setting up all these counterterrorism things. The country never had a comprehensive anti-terror operation until I came there. Now, if you want to criticize me for one thing, you can criticize me for this. After the cold, I had battle plans drawn to go into Afghanistan, overthrow the Taliban, and launch a full-scale attack search for bin Laden. But we needed basing rights in Uzbekistan, which we got after 9/11. The CIA and the FBI refused to certify that bin Laden was responsible while I was there. They refused to certify. So that meant I would have had to send a few hundred special forces in helicopters refueled at night. Even the 9/11 Commission didn't do that. Now, the 9/11 Commission was a political document, too. All I'm asking is, anybody who wants to say I didn't do enough, You read Richard Clark's
Do you
book.
think you did enough, sir?
No, because I didn't get him.
Right.
But at least I tried. That's the difference in me and some, including all the right-wingers that are attacking me now. They ridicule me for trying. They had 8 months to try. They did not try. I tried. So I tried and failed. When I failed, I left a comprehensive anti-terror strategy and the best guy in the country, Dick Clark, who got demoted. So you did Fox's bidding on this show. You did your nice little conservative hit job on me. What I want to know is...
I'm asking a question. You don't think that's a legitimate question?
No, it was a perfectly legitimate question, but I want to know how many people in the Bush administration you asked this question of. I want to know how many people in the Bush administration you asked, why didn't you do anything about the coal? I want to know how many people you asked, why did you fire Dick Clark? I want to know how many people you asked about this.
Did you ever watch Fox News Sunday, sir?
I don't believe you asked them that.
We asked plenty of questions.
You didn't ask that, did you? Tell
about
the truth,
the USS Cole?
Tell the truth, Chris.
With Iraq and Afghanistan, there's plenty of stuff to ask.
Did you ever ask that? You set this meeting up because you're going to get a lot of criticism from your viewers because Rupert Murdoch supported my work on climate change. And you came here under false pretenses and said that you'd spend half the time talking about, you said you'd spend half the time talking about what we did out there to raise $7 billion plus in 3 days from 215 different commitments, and you don't care.
But President Clinton, if you look at the questions here, you'll see half the questions about that. I didn't think this was going to set you off on such a tear.
You launched it set off on a tear because you didn't formulate it in an honest way, and because you people ask me questions, you don't ask the other side.